I think we're good. You can just jump off, Kirsten. Yep. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. We're so glad you're here. We love to get together, don't we, Chris?
Yes, we do.
Oh my gosh. So once a month we are together, but on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. This is our time on Facebook Live to get to know you and to get to know your story as a writer. So we do, again, art the first Tuesday of the month. Then we do writing. Then we do music. And lastly, we do dance. And so come. It's so much fun. So in this Create Forum, we're talking to Amy Calkins. Welcome, Amy.
Hi.
Woo! Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad. How's your weather?
It's good. It's cold, but not too cold.
That's awesome. Now, what city are you closest to right now?
Lancaster City in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania. So I've seen Amy many times. Plus, she was out in Reading as well at Bethel and helped with Danny Silk's book. Share a little bit about your background so people get to know you and they can see your background in writing and all that good stuff.
Well, I have a degree in just English literature, and pretty soon after I graduated, I started freelance editing. So I've just been doing that for the last 16 or 17 years, and also do some ghostwriting. And just this last year, I wrote my own first book, which is exciting.
I
After
know.
reading and having so many other people write their books.
Yeah, I was able to read it and give a recommendation, but it's called The Way Back to Hope, The Truth About Overcoming Disappointment. And PJ is going to put in the chat where you can get and see her blogs, what she's written, and get the book too. So PJ is going to put that in there too. We want you to see this amazing writer. And today we're going to talk about her journey. And then we really want to help you to write as well. So put in the comments your name, where you're from, and if you have any questions or maybe what you want to write. What is your heart? Do you love poetry? Do you love blogging? Is there a book that you've already written or want to write? We really want to come alongside and see you grow. And again, Amy is a great editor. You put together Danny Silk's book, right? On women.
Yes. Yeah. I ghost wrote that book for him.
Which is so fun. So
yeah.
Danny Silk was on staff at Bethel at that time. Now he's down in Sacramento at Jesus Culture Vet. Such a good friend of ours too. I love it. But anyway, Chris, talk a little bit about what follows this Facebook Live, because you've been working with writers for a long time. And so we wanted to really help you to grow in your writing. So in our Create Academy, we have what's called a focus group, and share a testimony too. Share about how people can grow there.
Well, what's nice about writing is you write by yourself in your office and you're just with your computer. But what's not nice is you're not communing with other people. And so it's always good to be in a writer's group. And so all my life I've been in writers groups, or I've wanted to connect with people, and I've encouraged people to find another person that you can talk to, write with, have coffee with, because that's in the sharing of ideas and in the talking out of your ideas, you create new ideas and you get inspiration from each other. And God uses that. He wants to be in that group with us. So that's what we're doing with this focus group right after this meeting. We're going to be on Zoom in the Create Focus Group, and PJ is going to put the link for that. And what we do in that group for about an hour, as we will share our dreams and our goals, what projects we're working on and how far we've come with them, what we need. We'll ask questions. We'll, be able to field some coaching questions. Amy's going to join us today as she's able to, because she's got kids, but she's going to be able to answer more of your questions. We'll be able to share some of our writing, which is always so much fun to share with the group. And some of the things that we've learned, like last time we talked about outlines and how they can really help our writing move along. And we developed, actually, I took them through an exercise on creating an outline in 10 minutes about what you want to write about and what kind of a book you want to write. or you could actually apply that for blogging as well, for a series of blog posts. So those are types of things. I've been a writing coach for a long time, an editor too, very much like doing what Amy's doing. I want to get into some of the ghostwriting. I have done that, like rewriting articles for magazines and newspapers, but never a book. And I think that'd be really fun, Amy, to work with somebody like that. So anyway, I've written my own books, and I, between the two of us, Amy and I, can just share with you some of our experiences, what mistakes we made, how we overcame. And, we're just like you. We're just like you. We've just had a little bit more experience, and we'll share what we have.
It's so true. And if you know of writers, as well as you're listening, that, oh my gosh, I have my friend over here who's always wanted to write but couldn't. I mean, part of it is people walking you through it. When I wrote Born to Create at Destiny Image, I remember I had Pam Spinozzi, I had other people looking at my work. I had incredible people that were behind the book, Allison Armerding, and that really helped me to feel confident and competent, because, well, okay, how do you do this? Okay, how do you make a reference over here? Believe me, these two coaches will help you with all of that. And also, it's good to know, like, there's every type of genre. It's kind of like art. There's every type of genre that you could do. There's poetry, I know, that you've had that has been submitted and that you've had published too. And of course, my book, Credit to Overcome. So we're not just looking for one type of genre, but really, writing takes so many different forms. And again, you can also write not necessarily for a Christian audience, and you can touch so many people as well. I mean, C.S. Lewis in Chronicles of Narnia, that book completely radically is still changing people's lives, both adults and children. And again, that's not necessarily a Christian perspective, but you can see it interlaced throughout. And so, believe me, there's so many different ways that you can write for different audiences, and these two will help you today. So look at the link, the Zoom link, and join. It's free today, so go ahead, because they want to see you grow. But let's go into questions. Again, if you have any questions for me, please, please, please put it in the chat. So my first question for you, Amy, is what do you think are the most important points to consider if you want to be a kingdom writer? So kingdom meaning that you come from a perspective of bringing heaven down to earth. And and again, this is important. Like, how do you bring that in, and how do you help people to grow and start that journey? So what's different about a kingdom writer? So go ahead, Amy.
Well, I think one of the main differences is motivation, and that we want to always be doing it for love. For me, I found that the head game is really challenging. Like, when you start thinking about really putting yourself out there, there's all these doubts and questions, and is anyone going to read this? And am I sharing too personally? All the fears, but to be compelled to do it for love, and because that God's put that thing in you that you have to share and impart with other people. And then I think also another part of being a kingdom writer is pursuing excellence. Unfortunately, I think in a lot of the charismatic stream, in writing at least, excellence hasn't been pursued as much as being able to just get our message out there as quickly as we can. So I think there's a lot of room for growth, and part of being a writer is really pursuing those opportunities to grow. And I mean, of course, that's the whole point of your school, which I love that. And even a book like On Writing Well by William Zinsser is just a valuable tool to help people grow from just being someone who can write to someone who writes well. I think it's easy to think, because we all know how to write, like we can all read, we can all write, that it's something anyone can do well, but that's not true. So we all I think God is glorified, and our message is able to reach more people when we can do it with excellence.
I agree.
So
How do you spell that book? I mean, the name of the author, it's William.
I think it's Zinsser, pretty sure.
Zinnesser. And what is the book called?
On Writing Well.
On Writing Well. Okay.
It's very practical and big picture and small pictures. It's a great resource for people.
Okay, we'll
For
put that
sure.
in the chat, guys. It's Zinnesser on Writing Well. So look that book up. Come on. The more we understand, the more we understand the craft, the more we understand how to write, the more excellent our work will be, and the easier it will be for people that are editing. Isn't that right? You too. That. Chris, share one of your favorite beliefs that has helped writers develop their craft.
Let's see, I wrote some things down here. Know your reader, like what are the questions that they're asking? Who are you writing for? And what are their needs? It's not all about you, it's about who you're writing for too. And so a lot of, like when I'm writing poetry, that is about what's coming out of my heart. And I feel like it's resonating with someone else's heart out there, and that God's giving me this idea and inspiration. And that can apply to nonfiction and fiction as well. Writing from your heart, but thinking about who might be reading it as well and what questions they're asking. Also being part of, again, a writing community, but also understanding craft. And there are books out there, and I'll think of the books too, and I'll text PJ and have them put them in her chat. But about kind of what Amy was talking about, you can write your first draft. I'm talking about a book right now, but also blogs. You write it out. You just write from your heart. You just write whatever is coming to your mind, what you're feeling, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, your description, and it's with some organization, but you just keep writing. And that's what I've told people in my writing groups before. We'd have writing exercises for 10 minutes. Just put your pen to paper and don't stop writing until the 10 minutes is over. And then you go back. Then you go back and you craft it. And that's the fun part for me. You take what you've written, you apply excellence to it. You change things, 5 words to one really great word. You coordinate and refine your thought, and you make it an excellent sentence. And so that second draft is, for me, the most fun. I love writing the first draft, but that's hard and it's painful sometimes. But you get to the second draft, and that's where the real creative art comes in, and making it excellent before you even send it to anybody else to read. And so those are kind of some of the things that I really believe really help. Give yourself space to just write it and just pour it out first.
I love that. I think that part of it in this whole process is just people starting to see that there's a part where you just have to get in the flow. And that's something that I had to do and I love that part where you just kind of, before you go into just like working on the details, you have to flow as a writer to find your actual lane. And so that really is super, super important, is like learning the flow and learning what, as a speaker and as a writer, because I'm a speaker as well, how does that flow together? And some people, like, I love it, some people bring so much humor when they write, and that just makes me so like, oh, I'm getting to know the writer. So sometimes I think that some people come from a very perfectionistic, it has to be perfect, whereas I like to see the personality of the writer flow into what they write. Anyway, that's just me as a person. I want to get to know them because I feel like that engages me into the heart of the writer as well. So these are all good points, guys. Take this and run with it. Again, give us your comments. Let us know what you think. Amy, let's hear a little bit about your new book. I'm so excited. It's called The Way Back to Hope.
I have it here.
Oh my gosh, look at that book. The Truth About Overcoming Disappointments. Do you have any testimonies from people who've read it? And where can they get your book? I just share a little bit about this book, your process, and what you feel God wants to do through your book.
Yeah, well, the message, I felt like God really put the message in my heart multiple years ago as I was walking through a healing journey that I'm still on, related to my my arms and wrists and having pain. But then 4 or so years ago, our family experienced a pretty significant trauma for one of our children. And so then I got to really like walk that out on a whole new level, you know? And so just last November of 2021, I was feeling really overwhelmed with all the editing that I was doing plus homeschooling. And so I was just like, I'm going to take a month off. I'm just going to not accept any work in November. And just a few days in, God was like, actually, now it's time to write that book. And I literally wrote it in 3 months, just sitting at my kitchen table with the kids all around. And I don't know, it was an amazing process for me. And I think really healing. Part of it was really healing and being able to share my story, because when we were in the middle of things, it was very confidential. Obviously, we could talk with our pastors and other like close people, but a lot of people in our lives had no idea what was really going on. And so then it was, I obviously went through all the editing process and all of that, but published in July. And so far the feedback has been really, really great. And one of my favorite comments just from recently, a man commented on my a Facebook post, and he said that my book helped him to not lose his faith, which I was just like, oh my goodness, like that's incredible, right? Like if I can help people know how to process the pain and loss and grief and like, why did this happen? Where was God? Like all of that. So that they don't lose their relationship with him, but can weather that storm. Like it makes it all worth it. Right. So that's the whole point of the book is, kind of addressing some of the, I think, wrong beliefs that we've had, or at least, I certainly grew up with some things that I now recognize weren't helpful for me in processing hard things. And then just also a faith-filled, hope-filled perspective, a way to move forward, still holding on to hope, even though you've been disappointed,
Yeah, and one of the things that happens when you go through hard times that aren't necessarily the right way to, you have a selective audience of people that are walking you through, friends or close people that are walking you through. Those traumas, those things that happen in your life, those things, like, it's hard to get out of those things. It's hard to find hope. It's hard to like be able to share. And so many people, like you said, they lose their faith because of, we do have some shout outs joining us. So Jennifer from Ventura, California, Jennifer, Susan Conover, again, so what Susan's doing is she's taking photos and making a devotional and journal with them. Oh, that's amazing. I love that, Susan. That's part of what we really want to see is different creative ways, like my art and poetry book that we can create. Jennifer, I'm in the process of writing my books. I did the writer group with Havilah last year. So glad that you did that. Susan from Florida, Patricia from Springfield, Missouri. Oh, welcome, Patricia. Denise from London, Padge from Denver is joining us. So glad you're with us. Regina from Jamestown, Pennsylvania. Regina, you have another Pennsylvanian right here. I love it. Jennifer Olio, I received the freedom to combine my art with my writing, and it changed me. That's so cool. I know, like, Chris, you have your story of what you did with your photography. Share about that.
I've been blogging for probably 15 years now, ever since, 2009, I think. And I always I love photography and writing. And, when I have a camera in my hand and I'm out in nature, it's like God shows me things I wouldn't notice if I didn't have the camera. And so I love to take pictures of that so other people can, and post them so other people can appreciate them. And so I love to post them with some of my blogs and my poetry. And I've got 2 different blogs that I'm working on. I'm thinking of a new one, and I post those on my website. But what a fun thing to illustrate a blog, a photo, with a special piece of writing. And I always make my writing really pretty short. I don't make long blogs because I want to make it so they get a full effect of the photo and this thought, for the day. And so I've done that for several years now, and I really love it. I haven't blogged that had a post for a little while. I'm about ready to post a couple things this week, but I really love blogging, and that's something we all can do, and we can combine it with art. I've also painted. I'm not a great painter, but I've painted some flowers, and I take pictures of my flowers and post those with some of my words as well on blogs, and that's something we all can do. So
it's so true. It's like this painting that I did. We're doing a big, huge event called Hope Fest. We would love for you to be there. Jennifer and Ventura, you can be there. It's in Orange County. April the 1st, I'll do training on that Friday. But guys, this is what it's all about, is our books are meant to reach down to touch people. And about Amy's book, comment on what you loved about this book. This book is a great adventure of the heart that you wrote, and it also dives deep into pain and into the process of how we deal with pain and how we grow. And I think that's the part that's so exciting to me, is like, it shouldn't be just a journey where we're always talking about over, like, oh yeah, and now we're great. No, we have to help people in their process. We have to be able to share that and put language and words to that, which we'll talk about in a moment. So what I love about your book, Amy, and please comment on what you love about this book, or what you want to read as well when you get it. But part of that process is like, we need to deal with some difficult subjects. We need to deal with things that sometimes are not beautiful. Like I love just the new movie out called Jesus Revolution, and how Greg Laurie, from his perspective, how he was going in the wrong direction. And this was during the Jesus movement, and how these hippies are just like, it's free love, things are happening, but of course there's so much pain, there's overdoses that are happening within that culture. And it's so cool because in that process, Jesus begins to reach out by a person who has dealt with that pain as well, Lonnie Frisbee, and reaches out. And I'll never forget what Chuck Smith said in the movie. He goes, well, why do they do drugs? And Lonnie said, well, they're looking for God, man. It's like, it really is that thing where when you go through difficulties, which is what you went through, Amy, the fact that in disappointment, like, you have to be able to help a person to find God, and you have to have a way in. And he did it through his music, the music of love song, those kinds of stuff really helped that culture to understand. And also it was through story. So Lonnie's many stories and testimonies really helped them to engage. And that's what you're talking about, which I absolutely love. Like, this subject is so vital as a writer, is how do we help people with where they're truly at? Ann Ford from Kona, Hawaii. Denise, so Ann, welcome too. We have more joining. And let us know what you think about this, Ann. Denise Haida says, I've been writing since I was a child, studied writing poetry. Now I have ideas in a book I wrote with the Lord that I really want to publish, but I haven't had luck with any agencies. Wow, that's really good. Any tips on how to get started in your career? Okay, wow. Okay, there we go. Amy and Chris, why don't you answer that?
Well, I think the amazing thing about writing a book today is that it's never been easier to self-publish. And you don't have to be dependent on a publisher to get your message out. Obviously, it takes more work if you're going to self-publish, as far as finding the editors and designers and all that, but it's still very doable. And you will actually make more money on your book if you self-publish it versus going with the traditional publisher. So they can both be good options, but don't let that limit you.
Yeah, and whether or not you go with a mainstream publisher or self-publish, you still are in charge of marketing your book and getting the word out there and letting your friends know about it and asking your friends to let their friends know about it. So there's a whole lot of resource out there for you to check out. You can Google it and get a whole lot of ideas. But yes, putting a team around you is so important, of editors and the designers, and that's doable. We can help you with that, and with ideas of people that you can call and people I've worked with, people Amy's worked with, or Amy herself is an editor. And I'm a developmental editor. So there's all sorts of ways that you can get the help you need to get started. There's also access to software online where you can actually design your book. And one of our members, Patricia Webb, just released a book, and she designed the cover and the whole inside by herself. She hired me to look at it, edit it, do a developmental edit, but very minimal cost involved in doing that yourself. And if you're willing to learn the software, I got to a point where I didn't want to do every little part of it. I wanted to just do one part of both working with writers as a developmental editor, but also as an author. I would rather keep writing and have a team around me that I know can do the job as far as designing and spend the time, pay them to do that. But there's just, it's so easy. It's really fun. Don't let anything stop you. When I was writing my book, Tapestry, it was like, how am I going to get this published? I don't know what to do. I don't have a budget. I don't know who to talk to. And God was saying, I'm going to be your publisher. I'm going to be your marketer. Just get it done and get it into somebody else's hands to look at. And so that was my job.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think it's really important, all of you that are listening right now, to know like a book and the formation of a book is, number one, Holy Spirit led. It has to be Holy Spirit led. This is what a kingdom writer is all about. You have to get these ideas that mean something to you. It's more than just getting words on a paper, but as a kingdom writer, there's an audience that you need to touch. I mean, I loved what happened in Matthew, because he was really called to minister by writing the whole gospel in line of the Jews, whereas John was totally different in his approach. John the Beloved, in what he wrote in the Bible, his audience was completely different. And I don't want to miss out on either one of those, but they both had to know their audience, and they both really, they began to craft it from their own experiences with Jesus in their own style. And so part of great writing comes from learning who you are as a writer, and learning your style, and learning what you have. And then from that end, you have to share it. And that part is the part where that's so vital, is to get a person who can look at your work, like right now in the focus group that's starting, so that you can kind of get their perspective as well. The other thing that I love is, like, especially online with social media, you can kind of post some stuff about maybe a blurb from something you're writing and find out what people think. Like, that's part of it. If you're writing a children's book, read it to children, find out if they really love it. I mean, find out their take on it. So I think getting feedback from your audience, getting feedback from people that have really helped others write their books and help to market, and finding out what you can do to market, all of that is the process of getting a book in formulation. So a book isn't just writing, which is really like, that's only the first step, but it's you understanding why you're writing it, and getting a dream and a dream team behind it. And then finding out, okay, do I self-publish like Amy's talked about, or do I use a regular, an already publishing house? Like, those are all important things, but don't do it alone. I just have to say that, like, I mean, I raise up, as you guys know, artists, writers, dancers, musicians, people in business, etc. And the number one issue that most people have is they do it alone. And when they find their community, like on Create Academy or on what's happening in these focus groups and forum groups, then they go, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, okay, this is more fun. And it's because we all can be our worst critics. So those are just very important points that we need to make very, very secure for you to know. It's okay if you don't know how to take it from A to Z. That's normal. That's totally normal. And so getting with a person like Amy and getting into the focus group with Chris, all of that is part of your process. And so I just want to bless you. If you feel like, oh, how would I start? If some of you out there that are listening right now, you don't know that you have a book in you. You don't know that it could be totally different. It could be, like we talked about, a devotional. It could be just blogging to touch people. I mean, some people have millions of viewers through blogging because it's short and sweet. and that reaches a certain audience that's totally different than a book that's, 200 to 400 pages. So those are the stuff that you need to figure out, but we're here to help you figure that out. But I have a question for Amy. Amy, how important is it, again, to let others read? This really dives into what we're talking about now and what you've written, and for writers to open up and get feedback. Why is that feedback thing such a fearful thing for people? But what can it do to help people to grow that want to write? So go for it, Amy.
Yeah. Well, getting feedback is vitally important, as you said, Teresa. And I think it's scary because when we write, it does feel very much like our child, like something that we've produced, and it feels really vulnerable to receive, to share it with people, and then to potentially receive critical feedback. But it's so important to do that. When I wrote my book, I mean, recently someone asked me, you're an editor, so did you have anyone edit your book? And I was like, yeah, I had 2 people edit my book. And even before the editing phase, I sent my book to like 10 or so people, like spiritual leaders, and also people I look up to as writers, and I just asked for their feedback and any feedback on the content, feedback on the writing, and that's like gold, to help you just strengthen your writing, because I mean, you said we're our own worst critics, but the flip side of that is that we also miss things because we're expressing our heart, and we don't always see like, oh, this part's really unclear, or it can be misunderstood, or this doesn't make sense, whatever. And it just having that additional feedback from people who believe in us, but who can say, hey, this needs work, or this, you could benefit from a really good story in this part, or whatever. That's just will take your writing to a completely different level. And even with blogging, I often ask for feedback, at least a minimum, from my husband. And sometimes if it's a subject that I'm just like, oh, feel a little nervous about this, before I put it out there, that I ask someone else like, hey, do you feel like this content's good, or does it need some work? And, I think we need to switch from believing that people are there to criticize us to that they're there to promote us and make us look even better, make us look like geniuses, right? So as an editor, that's always my goal. Like, how can I make this author look even more brilliant than they are?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so wise, and that's so true. And again, guys, write down, what are you afraid of? And if you're out there and you're going, I'm not quite sure, what are you afraid of? I mean, part of that in the chat, like part of that is that thing of somehow someone's going to not understand our message or change our message. Whereas great people that are helping you grow. Like my husband's one of my people that always looks at what I write for all of my coursework, for the different things that I do. And it's like gold, because he's seeing it from a totally different perspective. He's got his degree in Bible. He's got a different slant. He's a man, I'm a woman. There's so many different ways that he sees it that makes it a better read. And I'm so thankful for it. But there are times when I feel like, oh, but I really want that part, because it's redundant. You already added that part over here. And I'm going, oh, that means I have to take it out. And it's like, oh, you're right though. But then when I do it and I see it, it's so much better. And so part of that is, as a writer, don't get too attached, like learn that it's a fluid, it's fluid. It's not up for you to keep like this, but it's for you to go here. Oh, okay, these are some great concepts. So don't take it personal. I think that was a big deal for me. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I did. But Chris, you share too. What, from your standpoint, what really has impacted you in regards to writers and their need for feedback, their need for other voices?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that feeling of fear. And also at the very beginning, writing my story, thinking, who's going to listen to me? There's other books about this out there. Like, I'm an imposter. This is not going to work. And we set up so many limits before we even start or while we're going, or we're afraid to actually give it to somebody to look at. So I would just suggest before you give it to somebody, read through it yourself. You can even read it out loud, but you'll catch things yourself that so you can avoid some of that pain before you give it to somebody. I've had a lot of people give me things that really they didn't read through themselves. They just kind of gave me the whole file after the first draft. So I would suggest that first. But yeah, it's so important to have somebody else. I love being an editor. I love being a developmental editor. I love being able to take a book or take somebody's writing. Like I did a short book of maybe 10,000 words recently, and just really show them how to make it better or rewrite certain sections of it if they ask me to make it flow. And it was such a craft for me. It was a joy for me. It was a joy for them because it made them look better. And it was a really neat relationship, with the two, me helping this other person. And then she was able to put this chapter in this amazing book that's a bestseller now. So it's like, oh, that was kind of fun for me to be able to be asked for that and that I could really help her. But I think that's something we need to do. We need to be careful of who we give it to, though. Like, like Amy was saying, she knew she was very careful about who was going to read her book and who she was going to listen to about it. So, and you don't have to take everything. You still are in charge of your own book. You own your words, you own your stories. And so I always tell my people, like, you don't have to agree with everything I've done here, but this is what I would suggest. And I make the changes, but they still have the power to not do it too. And you retain all those rights. And, I was going to say too, how vulnerable do we want to be? And I think we'll talk about that in the focus group, because Amy was really good about how vulnerable she allowed herself to be in telling her story. And that was a concern of mine too when I wrote my book. And I think all of us who have been through something so difficult, disappointing, tragic, how vulnerable do we want to be when it concerns other people as well? And here we're putting our story out to the world. And I think that's a really good topic of conversation I'd like to approach. Amy, I think you did that really well in your book. And
Thank you.
yeah, and I know how hard that was, because it raises questions in readers' minds, like what could have happened, but you were honoring. And I think it's always about honoring the people that you're writing about.
Oh, it totally is. And I just have to say, like, what you just said is so profound too, is like, know who is going to help you with this book, because do they have the same core values that you have? I mean, are they a kingdom? Again, that's so important, is do they hold to the same kingdom Christian core values that you hold to when you're giving away the ability for them to look at your work? Do you have a relationship? Do they know your heart behind it? Because it can't be just like a person looking at it from the perspective of just, does it have good grammar? You want somebody who really has your heart behind it and who has experience and who's got your back. So those are very important points. We do have some great comments too, by the way. I love this. This is so good, guys. Padge, thank you, Padge, for saying this. There are so many people struggling with all kinds of things and need our help and encouragement. Yes, I love this, because the Bible and what we hear from what happened to Joseph in Genesis, what happened to Moses, etc. We just get the snippet, but we don't get the full understanding of the disappointments, the things that really happened behind leading a movement. And so what's great is, like, us that are down here in the trenches, we get to be a part of that. But again, like what you talked about, Chris, it's so vital that we know what to share to protect the people that that are in our life, but also to help others understand our journey. And that is where imagery, which we're going to talk about in just a second, similes, things like that, help us to share our stories in a way that the reader gets to understand that it wasn't just like walking through like beautiful fields of flowers. No, it was like walking into the night, the shadow of death, like what happened in Psalm 23, which I love, that David addresses the pain in his own heart during that time. So I really relate to David. So that's love. I love that, Padge. Jacqueline says she's always thought she wasn't a writer because she just did a blog. Oh, come on. Okay. I want you to speak into that right now, Amy. What is the truth about Jacqueline?
Well, no matter what you write, whatever the venue of your writing, you're a writer because you're writing. And like Teresa had said before, a blog can be extremely powerful. It's just a different venue, like also fiction or poetry. It doesn't have to, it's not only nonfiction teaching books that God cares about or wants to breathe on, it's all of it. So I think that blogging, I mean, I blog and I think it's extremely important. Just a few months ago, someone found me and she told me that she had been to a healing service and had faith that she was going to be healed, and then she wasn't, and it was like really like shook her. And she went home and Googled, like, what if I didn't get healed? And I happened to have written a blog on that, like with that exact title. And so she found it and like messaged me, and that it just restored her faith to like keep believing. And so you just never know how those blogs that you're writing are going to impact people. So keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Come on. We say
Yeah.
yes, keep doing it. And a
Mhm.
blog is really again, a blog is a way of telling, it's like the Reader's Digest is the smallest condensed
Mhm.
way of talking about a certain message. And so it does prepare you to in so many different ways, but it's good because a lot of people don't read books that are large. They read more of the blog. So you're attracting an audience that's totally different. And we bless you because
Mhm.
every time you write in the presence, God is going to bless that. We have a couple more comments too. This is so fun. Denise says, and she's talking about the feedback. This is about the feedback question, guys. Feedback can be received as criticism. Yes, that's what we think. That's exactly what needs to change. Feedback is not about criticism. It's about doing something in a different way. And again, I love what you talked about, Tracy, that, hey, as you look at work and as you comment on it, both you and Amy, of course, it's like it's meant as a suggestion, but it's not something that you have to do, but it helps
Mhm.
you look at your writing in a different light, which is very helpful. Mary Kay said she's afraid to sound stupid. Mary, we understand that that is something that a lot of people that are just starting to write feel, and we just want to say that the Lord's going to help you with that, and so is the focus group. Denise asked the constant question inside: what do I have to say that hasn't really been said? Oh, come on. Okay. Address that question, Chris. Denise said the constant question, what do I have to say that hasn't already been said?
That's kind of what I was talking about before. We were talking about the imposter syndrome too. It's like,
Mhm.
but nobody has experienced what you've experienced
Right.
and can tell it the same way.
Mhm.
And so you can tell it and give words to it that that are going to be so unique and so beautiful and so compelling to somebody. And God knows the readers He's already planned to read what you have to write. So I feel like if you're compelled to write, that is just a lie. That's one of those lies from the enemy that wants to defeat you before you even start. And so you just turn that around and go, God has given me this. He's going to write with me. This is my story, and it's
Mhm.
valid. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mary, I would strongly suggest to go to the focus group and talk this stuff out and get a partner, because we all need people that will, sometimes the voice of that voice inside that says you're stupid, or that you haven't really like said anything that's like original. All of that can be addressed in a group that supports you, so that you feel like those defeating mindsets are going to be defeated by you being together. So I want to encourage you guys to do that. But Amy, let's talk about this. Amy, being in the publishing and editing industry, what do you, and Chris as well, look for when you read through a manuscript? What are you looking for? What's the goal that you're looking for, so that people, when they write, can start to look for that in their writing too?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a couple things obviously that really stand out. One of them, just on a more basic level, is making sure that it's technically done well. I mean, obviously not expecting everyone to have all their commas perfect or anything, but working on having good sentence structure and fresh language, all of that. And I mean, you would be amazed by how, I mean, Chris probably knows how poorly some books are put together. And, like you said, it's probably because they didn't read back through it. I definitely encourage, I mean, I don't even know how many times I read through my manuscript before I published it, but many, many times. And that's so vital. And another thing that I think is really important and often missing, especially in nonfiction, or where we're trying to teach something, is we get very focused on the teaching and we forget that the most important way or effective way to teach is through story, and sharing who we are, and being vulnerable in a way that is not too vulnerable, maybe transparent is a better word, being transparent about where we've been and how God spoke to us. And like those stories will stick with people so much longer than teaching points, or they help bring the teaching points into people's hearts because it becomes an experience for them and they connect emotionally with it, not just intellectually. So I think when someone has really dynamic stories, that is just huge. So I think books that can really tell a story and use story to teach, I love that. I love working on books like that.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Guys, did you get that? So this is the secret sauce. So pay attention. And Chris, you too. What is it that you feel?
Well, thanks, Amy. That was awesome. And those were
It's
super
incredible.
points. And what I look at too is structure of what is coming to me. I'm looking for a flow. So I'm looking for flow in the book. And so how the book has been set up, I can really tell if they've started with an outline or they just kind of wrote without an outline because there's organization issues. I'm looking for sentences that are concise, but also sentences that are flowing a little bit longer. I'm looking for repetition, like if there's repetition within the manuscript, stories that have been told 2 or 3 times that only need to be told once. I work with a teacher right now who writes books, and I guess in teaching you have to repeat a lot of things. He says that, but I'm going, not in a book. The reader's going to feel like you thought they were stupid. So you
Yeah.
not repeat. And just that I'm looking for less is more, and really I'm trying to help people use better words to instead of longer phrases. What the biggest points to me, that really, I'm an advocate for the reader, who's going to read the book. And I'm looking for things that are going to slow me down. And those are sentences that are way too long. Those are jumping from past tense to present tense within the same paragraph. Those are jumping from first person to third person as you're writing. And like these are structural things that you can catch. And it would be really good to know from the get-go to remember to stay within your style of writing that you're going to use throughout the book. So that's the kind of things I'm looking for as a developmental editor. And then as an editor, yes, you're doing line by line, word by word, punctuation and grammar as well. Very difficult work, very important work for your book.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll give you a quick example of something like Kevin was really wanting, like what Chris is talking about. It was he really wanted a technical book on Gnosticism, and that is like just how the body is evil and the spirit is good. And it was a thought that was permeating the culture, especially in with the New Testament being written at that point in time. And so he when I was reading it, and Pam Spinozzi was reading it to another editor at Bethel, I said, there's no story behind it. It's like, it's not grabbing me because it's too technical in the fact of its writing. It's more of I would say like a scholarly kind of approach. So the normal person who needs to read it won't read it. And I said, so we changed it to be like a courtroom scene. And it was so much better. And so that's important, is like when what we're talking about is like looking at the power of what happens in this whole thing of publishing and editing, is they can see it from a standpoint of who's going to be reading it, which you might not have gotten yet. So that's so helpful. Guys, we do have some shout outs here, and then we're going to do a demo. Delia Bodie says, this is so helpful. I really needed these tips. I have walked through some hard things, and this is knowing how to do it. And thank you so much. Delia, we can't wait to see you on the focus group. Amina Stewart asked, how do you re-walk through the pain in the writing after you've walked through it for years? And either you're no longer feeling that, so that you don't fully remember, or the parts that you do remember, we go on, the parts that you do remember, you have to reconnect to the pain. And how do you do that? Well, there's a part there that we'll talk about, and that will be in the focus group, of how do you walk through the journey as a writer when you're actually, in a sense, you have to remember the story behind the pain that brought the victory. And so they'll be helping you with that. But what a great question, Amina. But right now, because of time, we're going to move right into the demo. And this is so exciting. So I'm going to give this to Amy. Now, this is a writing exercise, so pay attention, because she's going to activate you in a second. So go for it, Amy.
Yeah. So I just want to talk, I mean, it's similar to what I just said a little bit ago, but on the importance of story. And I think it's important for us to remember that words are signifiers. So they point to realities. The words that we say don't have actual meaning in themselves, except the meaning that we give them, right? So using description and story helps make words more tangible to people. So saying I love you isn't as powerful as writing a story or a description that shows that love, right? Because I mean, that's the whole point of movies and books, like fiction books, that they touch us so deeply because the story tells us something. It shows us what something is like. So that's why I think when you write, it's really important to help your readers feel with you, not just understand with you. What they feel, they'll remember. So the exercise is to just simply write for the next 5 or so minutes. I'm not sure exactly how much time we have. Write about a time that happened recently where you felt something. And so just write the story of what happened, but don't describe but don't say I felt sad or I felt angry or whatever. Show us what you felt through how you write. So that's the demo that we're going to do.
Okay, so sweet. So you're going to want them to choose a circumstance, right?
Yes.
So choose a circumstance, guys. So Holy Spirit, just show them a circumstance that really is important to them right now in their life. It could have been something that happened last week. It could have been, again, a belief or a truth or something that happened, but how is it relationally based? We really want you to do that. And then again, it's just kind of what Amy talked about. We want you to paint the picture with an emotion behind it, but also not just saying I felt lonely, but actually what would be a descriptive type of story behind what that felt like. So we're going to set the timer, and we're going to give you guys let's give you guys 4 minutes. This is just a quick exercise to do it. So ready, set, go. You have 4 minutes to write. 4 minutes. Holy Spirit, show up. And I'm just gonna let the go, and we're just gonna have some silence here for you just to listen and to write. Okay, the timer is up. Woo! Okay, guys, I want to hear what you wrote and what God was saying. So put that in the chat as soon as you can. And Amy, did you write something or do you want to share something, or Chris?
Sure, I can share what I wrote. So it's just a short. While rushing around getting ready to take my daughter to school, I heard my phone bing. I tapped the screen to get a quick look. It was my husband. Well, it happened. His words hit hard. Are you serious? I quickly responded. Any severance package? I held the phone, waiting. What will we do now? I wondered. Bing. It was Mark again. No severance. I'll explain more when I get home. Need to clean out my office. Mom, we need to go, my daughter called. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my bag and headed for the door.
Oh, it's beautiful. I feel like I was right there with you in that. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
Wow, so beautiful. Chris, what did you write?
Okay, here it is. We drove on in silence. Then slowly, this quiet one opened and began to talk about the day. Then I opened up, talked about my strange week. We came to a space, a beautiful space where mother and daughter began to become a harmonic chord of my heart's song of deepest prayer, friends.
Oh, I love that. Wow. The story of your daughter, the story of what you are becoming, how it's synchronized together. That's amazing. Well, I just got back yesterday from Payson, Arizona. And so I did this picture of Jesus going through the waves. And then this one I did at For Hope Fest. So this is what I wrote based upon those two. It says, expectation was thick in the air as I painted the story of Jesus coming through the waters to rescue and meet us right where we were, right where we were. What need do you have that Jesus can fulfill? What stories does he want to tell you through his burning eyes of love? And then he reached down and grabbed me from the darkness underneath the waters and pulled me up with the strong, mighty arm of his right hand and rescued me and brought me close to him. I could see his smile, his strength and comfort filling my heart. Whatever had happened in the past, I was found. So that's what I wrote, like based upon the one I did in Payson and the one here. So I just I brought in my artwork too
Mhm.
into
Love
that
it.
thing. But again, guys, we only have a couple minutes. So please, 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 if you would like, put that in the chat, what you wrote. We would love to hear it. And again, put in the chat too, PJ, about the focus group, what the Zoom link is. If this is free, what are you going to be talking upon, you and Amy, Chris, that people would love, love, love to see and to know more about?
I have an outline and we'll follow that pretty closely, but it always turns out after we've had our interview that it goes a couple different ways. And I think I would really like to talk about this vulnerability piece and also about the piece that somebody asked about the pain and what happens when we write about past experiences and how we deal with that and how it can be healing, because it can be, and we'll talk about, Amy and I can tell stories about that. But I also want to make Amy and myself available as coaches to you today and just to be able to answer some of your questions. And we'll all be on Zoom together so we can see each other. So that'll be really good.
Yes, it's going to
Yeah.
be so fun. And guys, if you haven't had a chance to put that in the chat, share it when you guys meet together for that focus group. We really want to encourage you to join. And if you've never been on the focus group, don't let that stop you. We want you to be there. We want to see you grow. And part of risk is that you are just there. If you don't want to share, that's fine too. If you just want to listen and learn, that's fine too. We just want you to come as you are. And I would love it, Amy, if you could just impart again, make sure that you look at her website. And is there any more different places that you want them to go and to see your work? Anything else that you want to add, Amy, to how they can get to know you more?
Yeah, my website, which is where my blog is, and also links to where you can get my book, and you can sign up for my mailing list there as well. And then on Facebook, that's a great way to stay in touch as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Amy, go ahead and pray. Let's impart for
Yes.
all of you writers out there that need to have an impartation. Amy started somewhere on her journey. She started to believe in herself, believe in her story, and to write. The same with Chris. And we want to help you as well. So go ahead and pray, Amy. We're so excited. Thank you for sharing your heart too. That was amazing.
Absolutely. Jesus, I just thank you so much for all of these people, these writers who are listening and who will listen to the recording. And I just bless them with, first of all, the heart to believe that you've called them to write, and that you've made them to be creators in your image, that you created first and then you made us to create like you. So I just bless them to get in touch with that reality and to have the courage to show up and to share what they've written. Just thank you, God, for the message that you've put in every heart. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Amy.
Mhm.
Thank you, Chris. Please join us in the focus group in 15 minutes. It starts at 10:15. And again, it will go for about 45 minutes or so, but we just want to see you thrive and grow. I will see you two later. Blessings, everybody.